It's 2024, and thus we have finally reached the long-awaited point of it's happening and it's good in terms of racial discrimination and special privileges, as it is now officially no longer about the contents of your character. It is not about your passion or your drive or the quality of the product produced. It is about the color of your skin, the shape of your genitalia, your racial and ethnic heritage, and whom you choose to do the hanky-panky with. As many of you might remember this from a few years ago, 2020 in fact, that the Oscars were changing their rules. Now the Oscars, of course, was intended to be a reward system for particular things of excellence within the entertainment industry, and a self-aggrandizing circle jerk, of course, but at least the theoretical idea was a nice one, to reward particularly exceptional pieces of entertainment. Well, the new guidelines are now in effect, as there was a grace period for films that wanted to submit for Best Picture to be considered for 2 years, so that sets into power in 2024, which is, of course, today. What are these new rules? Well, they are, of course, of the diversity, equity, and inclusion nature, obviously. For example, the first category of standards, which the Academy called Groups A, deals with stories or characters on the actual screen. In this category, movies must have one of the following to be considered for the award: at least one lead or significant supporting actor from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group, or at least 30% of a cast in secondary and minor roles from 2 underrepresented identity groups, or a main storyline or subject that centers on an underrepresented identity and group. So, in other words, to get this prestigious reward, which it still is despite ever declining viewership, you must abide by racial policies. You must represent at least one of the correct racial groupings, otherwise you will not be considered. You must have an underrepresented racial or ethnic group, because you see, they're not treated right in society. These poor people have no rights or privileges whatsoever, which is why we're creating special rules that give them special advantages over everybody else. I swear to God, in another 100 years' time, people are going to look back at this age like we look at the Nazis. Unironically, you know how people look back at Germany 1936 on and wonder, like, how could they have voted Hitler into power? Well, that's how we're going to be viewed. How the hell did people put up with this obvious racial nonsense? At least that's my fond hope anyways. Or the Group B standard regards the creation of a production team behind the film. So you either need some front-loaded representation for the viewership, or at the very least you've got to abide by certain, quotas on your production team. At least 2 heads of major departments, as editing, directing, makeup, and hairstyling, costume, blah 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 blah, must be from an underrepresented identity group. Now, of course, identity groups here is the leftist identification, meaning it could be the color of your skin, the shape of your genitalia, or again, whom you so elect to bonk. As, despite all of the countless privileges and special protections afforded onto these groups, they are still underrepresented. That's weird, really. I mean, we've now literally tied performance awards to the hue of your skin, and yet still they are underrepresented. One wonders. Additionally, a minimum of one of these must be from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. We threw... God, I love this too. Like, this is official bureaucratic racism. Like, this is what the governments was striving towards, where we have now arrived at bureaucratic language for racial profiling, whereas like you must have at least one of underrepresented racial group, see following definition for underrepresented racial group, which incidentally they do have. Let's see here. What was it? There was an explanation in an article here somewhere as well. Here we go, yes. The Academy designates underrepresented racial or ethnic groups within the standards to include Asian, Hispanics, Latinx, so Latinos, you're shit out of luck, I'm sorry, Black, African American, Indigenous/Native American, Alaskan Native, Middle Eastern, North African, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islanders. Interestingly enough, this would make this underrepresented group the overwhelming majority of Earth's population, mind you, as the only one that aren't included appears to be, well, whites. Yet again, just one of those cute little points of irony there, huh? But of course, it is underrepresented as in underrepresented within our prestigious institution, the one that we are currently attempting to undermine, not dependent upon, the actual number of people. The Academy also designates a broader set of identity groups within the standards, because it is about including absolutely everyone with the exception of, straight white men, who are the oppressor class in this dichotomy, which includes the underrepresented racial and ethnic groups listed above, as well as women. 50% of the fucking population. LGBTQ people and people with cognitive or physical disabilities. Well, that includes the entirety of the broader left right there, so I guess we're now over 50% of the population. I do love how through the power of bureaucracy, we have managed to create the overwhelming global majority of people, something, what are we approaching now, 60, 70, 80% or so, as the underrepresented minority. I'm starting to see the points they're making about white supremacy. I mean, if such a clear minority manages to so thoroughly oppress such an overwhelming majority, there's something impressive about it. Oh god. The modern day left will indeed make white supremacists of us all, one way or the other, I suppose. Group B standards regarding the creative product team behind the film. At least 30% of the crew are from underrepresented identity group as the third qualifying metric there. Group C standards have to do with the paid trading opportunities that film companies offer groups of people who are underrepresented in Hollywood. Yes, I forgot to mention, there are also indeed specially paid job opportunities open only to those who have been born correct. This is much like the BBC, of course, giving out official hiring calls when whites need not apply. These are some fine prints distinguishing between huge companies with deep pockets. Must offer paid internship or apprenticeship opportunities in a variety of departments to people from underrepresented identity groups and must actually be employing people in those positions. Again, this is one of those things where, legalistically speaking, this is quite obviously criminal because you are not actually legally allowed to discriminate from positions based on race or gender or indeed sexuality. See, we put in place quite sweeping legislation on this, saying that no, you're just not allowed to discriminate at all. But it turns out that being not allowed to discriminate is in and of itself bigoted. Again, I repeat, people 100 years from now are going to look back at this era with, at best, mild amusement and discomfort, and at worst, head-shaking absurdity. And must offer training and work opportunities in below-the-line, essentially lower and middle-level positions, to people from underrepresented identity groups. I think you're getting the general gist of this right here. Now, Group D standards deal with audience development, which is Hollywood's way of talking about the part of the business that get people to buy tickets to movies. Qualifies for this category, a studio or company distributing the film must have multiple senior level executives from underrepresented identity groups on their marketing, publicity, or distributing teams. In essence, what all of this boils down to is a Herr Doktor. And he has a nice little office, which is called the Oscars. You come in to Herr Doctor, and he pulls out his pliers, and he measures the circumference of your skull nicely, you know? He checks out the color of your hair and your skin, analyzes it, and then eventually takes a bit of blood from you to see how much purity there is in there. And dependent upon the result of these multitude of bureaucratic definitions, he will come to a decision whether or not you will be allowed to participate in this particular competition and be given a beautiful little gold participation reward. I genuinely do adore how the unending furthering of the modern-day wokeist left-wing ideas have brought us back to a state of affair that they would be clapping vociferously for back in the 1930s. I suppose, you know, that's progress, always going forward, eh? No matter how far back in time you must go. Oh, God help me. And this was all theoretical, I remind you, up until today, up until this year. These rules were merely just, you know, ideas. They were supposed to be guidelines for a while, but now they are actual legal writ, at least as far as the Oscars are concerned. So if a movie turns out to be absolutely amazing, if it is the best thing ever, if it is revelatory, if it is the kind of movie that changes lives, if it is made primarily by people with the incorrect complexion, well, I'm sorry, we can't consider it for the Oscars. Meaning that, again, the final conclusion must be that it is no longer about the quality of your product. The Oscars have finally gone from being, at least in theory, an award show that awards excellence to being nothing more than another racial hierarchy, where you receive your participation ribbon dependent upon the purity of the blood contents of your production team. What a goddamn world. You gotta laugh because, I mean, what's the alternative? Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.